Welcome to She Built That with me, Julie Nichols. My guest today is Poli, the CEO and founder of Strategic Talent Resources, and also a very good friend of mine. And I am so excited to introduce you guys to Joy. She is literally her name encapsulated. She is Joy everywhere. I freaking love Joy. She's amazing. You need a little joy in your life too. So Joy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so glad to have you, or be had, I guess. I love it.
I will be had you all day long. Joy is just freaking awesome. I can't even, you guys, you'll see what I mean. Okay. So Joy, welcome to the podcast. And I would love for you to tell us a little bit about your business, STR, Strategic Talent Resources. Just tell us about what you do and how you serve your clients.
Sure. So I own and operate an HR advisory firm called Strategic Talent Resources. We have been around for almost 10 years now. We started off as a single service provider, and now we have a full scope of services that we offer. We work with growing and scaling companies that are looking to improve their culture and adhere to HR best practices, showcasing their thriving and healthy workplace environment. We work with things around recruiting and retention and like the foundational things that HR provides to help businesses scale past their goals, to their goals, etc.
So you are basically an HR department for a business that doesn't have one.
Yep. I would say outsourced HR, but I think it's more than that because not only do I have a team of recruiters and generalists who help with all the day-to-day stuff, but then I'm able to work with my clients as a CEO advisor, and being a business owner myself, I understand a lot of the struggles that go with running a business. So I'm able to align that with what we're doing and to provide some real insight and advice.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that explanation. And I want to go back in time. So, imagine like the wavy lines, like we're going back in time. We're going back in time. And I want to ask you, so before launching your company, what were you doing professionally? And then how did that influence your path?
Okay, it's going to be a little bit of a story, so bear with me on this. But
Okay.
my path was influenced a couple different ways, actually. So fresh out of college, or I should say, well, in college, I was an intern for a women's shelter for domestic violence victims and witnesses and children and women. And I sat in the house and I was responsible for protecting those victims and making sure that their abusers were not able to find them, and making sure that they had the resources that they needed. And as an intern I was studying criminal justice and law at Marquette University. I was really passionate about, because I come from like a service foundational family. We did a lot of service hours back in my childhood. I was really passionate about like helping others. And I know that phrase gets used a lot, but more so helping them through the journey of an unknown path. They aren't aware of what they're supposed to get or deserve or need or want. And so it was my job to educate them on their rights and what they were able to do to make their lives better. And so I did that for years. And then when I graduated, I applied to the Cook County State's Attorney's Office down in 26 in California. And I got a position as a domestic violence and sexual assault victim witness advocate for felony cases. So very, homicides, very intense, horrible things that I saw on a daily basis. And I would help explain the court process to these victims and witnesses of these crimes. So I was helping. A lot of the criminal defense system is geared towards the offender and their rights. And so my job was to make sure that these victims and witnesses were able to do their victim statements, were able to testify and get time off from work. And, it was a little bit of a counselor, but also a lot of process. And so I moved out of that and into HR, and you're like, okay, how does that shift
I mean,
happen?
I'm sorry, but like, I just have to go back to this because that has to be such a difficult job,
It
like
was really emotionally
emotionally.
difficult, and I was only 23.
Oh my
I
gosh.
was so young, and I'm in courtrooms like separating fights of victims and, offenders' families, and sitting through baby autopsies and
Oh
just the
my
worst
God.
things you could have imagined. But what I will tell you it did was give me the ability to speak on process, to advocate for others, to empower people to step into their power. Um, and when I started to get jaded, when the joy was lost, I decided it was time for me to make a move. And so I actually went and saw a career counselor, kind of like the Tammy Palmer that we love.
Tammy
This was
Palmer was our guest on
before
our
I knew
previous
her.
episode.
Before I knew Tammy, I went to a career counselor, and I started at basics, like what should I do? And she took me through a series of things. And what we found out was a lot of the skills that I had really aligned in human resources because it was all about advocacy and people. It was all about process, and it was all about clearing the fog and really making sure that people felt included, and that the culture was comfortable for all, and that everyone was able to apply to jobs, get hired for jobs that they're qualified for. So I kind of shifted into that, and I took a lot of my criminal justice and law experience and then my real time counseling experience, and I moved into the staffing world. And I started working for a couple different staffing agencies. Actually, I applied to a position through the staffing agency and then got hired by the staffing agency to work for them. To work
Lucky
for them
them.
as right as a entry level recruiter. And I was learning everything when it came to recruiting, resumes, interview tips, all that fun stuff. And I was responsible for a full sales desk, so I had to close and find my own temp to hire and permanent positions, as far as with clients and prospects, bring them in for business, and then I worked on margins. I ended up growing and advancing all the way to be the branch manager. And then I was like, what else is there? Because I honestly felt like, as someone who's very black and white when it comes to rules and laws, I felt like I was kind of flying by the seat of my pants, and I wasn't really sure that I was giving the best practices advice. In staffing, it's quite different than in like corporate HR or in HR and businesses. And so um, I wanted to move into corporate and get some of that like real life experience in how recruiters are doing it in big corp.
Mm.
And so I applied and got hired at a company called West Corp, which is a $1 billion company. They do telecom. Everyone's used them. I don't know anyone who hasn't used a conference dial-in line, and they're the largest ones who do that. So I worked there for quite some time. Started as an entry level. I think it was called like recruiting coordinator, which was like interview coordination.
Okay.
And by the end of it, I had worked my way up and had an offer in hand for being the director of HR, but I needed to step back because they were asking me to travel all over the world and train. We were an international community, and I was one of the lead uh, HR execs as far as recruitment, specifically high level sales positions. So we were making offers of like three quarters, $500,000 in salary. These were big positions
Mm-hmm.
that we were filling. And so I got to learn a lot about sales in that process too. So anyway, so I took a step back from corporate, about 10 years ago, and I never looked back. And I'll happily share that, now or at another time.
Yeah. So talk to me about the moment when you decided to start your own business. Like, you know, what was that? What was the specific moment that you were like, I'm going to do my own thing? And why did you decide to do that?
Okay, I can tell you the exact moment. So I was pregnant with my second child in corporate. They did not know I was hiding my pregnancy because it was like a year and a half after I had my first one. And I really, as a woman in corporate, one of the fears, and I speak to this because I experienced it, but also because I've talked to so many who've experienced it, which is, the fear is that you go out and have a baby and you come back to either a lesser role or you lose traction on your um, merit, on the things that you've worked so hard for, on your title, on what they're going to give you as far as opportunities. And I really couldn't afford to lose that traction. And frankly, I worked my butt off to get it. Um, but so I went and I had my baby, and I was on maternity leave, and I came back and I was suffering from major postpartum depression. And I had called my sister one day in the middle of my first ever panic attack and was like, something is going on. I am not doing okay. And the stress and the travel and the expectations. And I was only seeing my daughter like an hour a night at that point, for bath and bed. And I just felt like I was failing at everything, even though my career was succeeding. Um, and I felt like my husband never had to deal with any of that. The men in my life never had to like pick career over kids in that way. And I'm not built to be a stay-at-home mom. Like, I'm not. I need to be busy and doing things and having adult conversations and feeling valuable to the community. And I kind of felt like, well, what am I supposed to do now? And so I called my sister, who is a business coach, who is your business coach and my business coach now. And I said to her, like, what am I going to do? And she was like, what do you mean, what are you going to do? We grew up in family business. You're going to pick yourself up by the bootstraps and you're going to build something that works for you and your lifestyle. And I was like, I don't, how? Like, I have benefits and I have a pretty big salary and I have, responsibilities and I want to grow to be the VP of this organization. And she was like, it's okay to do it for yourself, right? To build it for yourself. And so what I did was I took a step back and I did some like hourly consulting. And really what I was trying to do was kind of understand the marketplace for small to medium businesses, because the last time I was in that world was when I was growing up. Like, my family is in family business. So I started working at the age of 7. And the last time I really thought about business in that way was in that world. And I ironically never wanted to be a business owner because I saw how much my
Hard.
parents worked
Yeah.
and how hard it was and how much they sacrificed. And I really didn't fully understand it as a kid. I now do. And so I decided that it was time to, as Kim said to me, leap and the net will appear. And I was like, what net? I'm a very like logical person. I was like, where is the net before I jump, right? I was like Indiana Jones, like trying to dust the path as you walk, for the movie reference, if you will. But I was trying to really. It's hard for me when I'm very process oriented, very black and white, very uh, someone who wants to know like the next step. It was very hard for me to just be like, and I quit this big job and now I'm going to work for myself. I mean, I think my husband and I had several conversations, and I was like, I have to do this for us. Otherwise, I don't know how we financially take ourselves to this next level. because he was working in corporate, and there's nothing wrong with that, but there's no path for personal financial growth unless you're a six-figure executive, which I wasn't willing to spend the time 90 hours a week doing. So I had to build it myself.
And you did. She built that. That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that because, so many of the things that you were discussing, like, having to make a decision about like, I'm not seeing my children and, your struggle with postpartum depression. Like these are things that so many women don't talk about and they don't
Yeah,
share. And it's so common. And people think that there's something wrong with them. And it's like, no, this is what like every woman goes through when they're at that crux of like career, family, like, and then having to sometimes make a hard decision.
right.
Um,
And
so
feel
that,
like you're supposed to do it all, but like the world isn't built for us anymore to be able to do it all in that way. I mean, back in the 50s, it was like, okay, you're a stay at home mom. Now it's like, okay, you can be a working mom, but there's no like real, I never saw until I started, building it for myself and working with my sister. There's no real balance. It's more integration. And you know that now.
mm,
Like
mm-hmm.
it's less balance and more like I can take a business call while the kids are in the back of the car and they know to be quiet while I close a deal, right?
Yes.
And we had that, right? We had that in a meeting where you and I were in a meeting. I'm like, oh, God, the kids are in the car. So I think it's more the ability and permission to give myself to be both, to be it all at the same time instead of this word balance.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think the word balance means either or, right? You feel like it's like
Mm,
some over here, then some over here, then, right? And that's not my life. My life is literally everything all the time at the same time. I mean, yes, kids go to school and all that, but if they forget their glasses or their lunch, it's not my husband who goes, it's me. And so I
mm-hmm.
needed to create a business and a lifestyle that could handle the motherhood, the kind of mother I wanted to be, while also being the kind of professional I wanted to be.
Mm-hmm. And how long do you feel like it took to get to that point? You started your business, you're basically building everything from scratch, you're having to find clients, create processes, get money in the door while you're also raising young children. What did that look like for you in the early years?
It was pure chaos. But at first, I was just trying to make enough to pay for the nanny. That was my goal. Make enough to pay for the nanny. Then it was make enough to pay for the nanny and myself. Then it was growth from there. And I mean, I would have the nanny help with dinners. I would have the nanny help with cleaning and dishes. I would have the nanny help with a lot of things that I felt like were maybe, and I hate to use the words like not worth my time, but in a way, they really weren't worth my time because one of the things that Kim said to me was, well, figure out your hourly rate. And if it's worth that, then you can do it, right? If it's worth $150 an hour for you to make dinner, go ahead. But if it's worth the $20 an hour that you're paying the nanny, that's the route you should go. And so I started kind of looking at my life and my business and my time differently. And I do work a lot in my family business. They're a client of ours. And so I think my clients just understand that I am multifaceted and it's not just one lane. And also, I think that brings a youthful, and I'm not youthful anymore, but I used to be, uh,
Come
uh, uh,
on.
but like a youthful vision to the expectation of the workplace because there's a lot of molds that need to be cut in expectations of employees coming in every day or certain hours or work life balance or wage. And so I like to challenge the system in a way that empowers women, empowers employees, and also sets up those business owners to grow successfully and to show up as their best leaders, their best
Mhm.
selves. And sometimes you can't do that unless you have the right team to do that. And that's what we like to do is get you the right team.
I want you to talk about your secret sauce. Like why should someone hire you to build their HR department? Why should somebody hire you to help recruit their top talent? Like what is it about you that's so great? I mean, I know the answer, but I want
I
you to tell
mean,
us.
it's always like, oh, what do you think's great? I mean, I think because we bring the business owner perspective and HR best practices, and can provide immediate infrastructure growth strategies and solutions. And then the long term framework that's kind of built alongside of the day to day. And I know that's kind of complex, but basically it's like being proactive versus reactive, not waiting for, time and stress and cost and things to hit you. It's preventing it, it's mitigating that risk. It's understanding that there are things that you can do to make sure that you don't have problems with retention. You don't have high turnover. I used to talk with some clients who'd be like, I don't understand why everyone's quitting this job. And it's like, oh, 5 minutes with me and I can tell you why they're quitting. I mean, I nicely want to help you figure that out because one, it's not good for them, and two, the cost of bringing on someone and training them and onboarding them, and like it's lost revenue for you. But then also you have sales that needs to be done or fulfillment that needs to be done, and now you have less staff to do that, so it's going to impact your revenue as a business owner. So my approach is really like three things that we do for clients. It's around auditing, assessing, and aligning in those first 3 months. And then from there, it's really about like action and assigning, right, responsibilities, whether it's metrics, we call them KPIs, key performance indicators, whether it's, performance reviews, whether it's we have to do some comp analysis to make sure you're paying your team right. Like, we first got to see what's wrong in those first 3 months. Then we're going to give you a roadmap for the year and say, like, this is how we would work together. And making sure that aligns with their growth goals. And then, all the triage that comes along with it. Because once you start to change process or hold people to process, that's when you start to shake out the people that don't necessarily fit on the bus or in the right seats. And so you kind of make strategic decisions then.
One thing that you are so good at that I just have to say is that you are so good at like really seeing through the fog. Like you can really see what's at the root of the problem, and you are not afraid to talk about it, and you're not afraid to call someone out if they need to be called out. Like you do it respectfully, but you don't beat around the bush, and you are very good at when you work with your client, like, because I've seen you talk to people that you're working with, and then, when you know what the problem is, you are like, I'm not going to BS you. I'm going to say, like, this is what it is. And are you ready to tackle this? Because I can help you.
Yes. Yeah, I'm definitely not a yes person. I'm also I'm politely persistent.
Hmm.
But at the same time, like, why are you going to pay an expert if you're not going to take their expert advice? I wouldn't
Right.
pay a CPA to do my taxes and then do my 1040 EZ online. Like, that's just not the best thing to do. And so at that 3 month mark is where we actually have a conversation with our clients and say, do we want to proceed for the whole year? Or with this information, would you like to kind of step away, walk away, and maybe hide it? Like, I've had prospects and clients who work with me for 3 months and they don't like what we find.
That's interesting.
And then having those tough conversations about what they need to do to improve and work on the things that we found. You either have to be the right kind of leader to step up and say, like, holy crap, I didn't realize it was that bad and I need to fix these things. Or is it that you just want to take them to the next level? You want to grow your team, you want to inspire your team, you want to motivate your team. You're wondering how other leaders are doing it. It's not really a big secret, but at the same time, it's like you have to challenge yourself every day. You have to show up as your best self because people are not motivated by the mission of your business anymore. They're motivated by the people that they work for and with.
You hit the nail on the head with that one, especially in our, our post-COVID world.
For real.
It's so important that the people that we work with directly, we feel supported by them. And that, I mean, if you have a shitty manager, like, forget it. Like, the company could be the best company ever, but if you can't stand coming into work every day or having to have a meeting every day with your manager, it's like, bye.
Well, and like the
So
workforce has had it, Julie. Like even before the pandemic, I knew there was a workforce evolution about to happen because we had the old way of thinking or the old school, and then we had the new way of thinking kind of pushing against that. And what I mean by that is like when I first came into the workforce, the amount of negativity spoken about millennials and oh God, those millennials, and I'm an elder millennial, but those millennials and
I'm
oh
Gen X,
God,
everybody. I'm a young Gen X.
you're beautiful Gen Xer.
Ah, thank you.
Um, but they talked like negatively, like we were a foreign object, like we were some code that had to be cracked to work with us. When all we were doing was challenging the system that was built many moons ago and no longer made sense for the workforce. And then COVID happened. And when COVID happened, it was like, well, all this stuff that was supposed to happen or was going to happen is now just really going to happen. People are going to move, and either you're going to keep them as an employee or you're going to have to terminate them and hire someone local if you're insisting on people coming into the brick and mortar as an essential worker or as a mandate or whatever it might be. Right. But then the workers also have the choice to decide if that's a place they want to work because they're now going to judge you on your care for others, your care for them, your flexibility. And it's the uh, pay transparency laws are also coming out around this where it's sweeping across the nation. And
Yeah,
this really has to
Illinois.
do with like the wage gap. Honestly, it's just really helping us women around the wage gap because it's like 2059 before us women catch up otherwise. So there has to be something that changes this. And so the thing that changes this is that laws come out. Now, because it's state to state, it's really hard for HR people to kind of maintain, especially if you have a brick and mortar in Chicago and then staff in Nebraska, right? Like different laws, different rules, and how does the HR person handle and manage all of that? And so there will be a national law, an all encompassing ruling that'll happen here in the next few years around wage and transparency because it's too hard to manage state to state right now.
Mm.
So I anticipate that that will be coming. And part of that was because that, I mean, this goes on the heels of everything that just happened with the healthcare CEO, but a lot of it is because people felt like CEOs were taking more than their fair share of the pie. And so this pay transparency shows that. And so some companies are not only doing the pay transparency where they post the pay range, right? And that's really what it is. It's just say what you're willing to pay for the position, unless asking the person what they used to make and base it off of that, which as a female, that can be that you started lower because you were a female and now you're never going to get ahead, right? Um, and now the pay transparency laws are making large corporations flip the way that they're doing it, and they're outwardly getting ahead of it and posting, hey, these are the positions and these are the ranges and this is what our CEO makes and this is what our leadership makes. And the reason for that is because they are trying to say, like, we have nothing to hide.
That's awesome. That's great. I mean, it's about time. And I hope that this does move on to the national level. I mean, that would be so incredible. And I know in Illinois here where we live, it's starting in the new year, right? Like this
Yep.
is going to be a mandatory thing. So that as long as I think
Yeah.
your business has to be like 50 employees or more, something like that.
There's all sorts of rules around it, and I'm happy to talk with people about it. But the reality is, if you have an HR person, they're probably already doing it for you because it's a best practice. So it's more
And if you
the
don't, hire Joy.
right. If you don't, I'm happy to talk with you. But it's more the manufacturers or the ones who are kind of a little further back in the business evolution. And what I mean by that is like, you know, if they're a trucking industry, it's not like they're going to leadership development trainings in the same way that maybe someone in a different industry was. So they've got things to learn. But I do feel like the manufacturing industry is probably the furthest behind. And I only say that because we had a client recently who was fined by the Office of Federal Compliance. And so, what some people don't know is that if you have a federal contract, so a contract that the government gives you, you bid on it, you do an RFP, then you actually have to be federally compliant in how you're hiring. And that means hiring for equal pay, for equal salary, man, woman, doesn't matter, hiring based on skill set, hiring with minimum qualifications, um, equitable hires, diverse hires. And if you're not, then the government will find out. They will fine you, and then they're going to make you fix the problem. And that's when they bring us back in and say, on the back end, now we have to fix this. I'd rather work with clients on the front end and prevent and be proactive versus reactive. And now their brand is impacted by people thinking negatively about them and how they're unfairly paying.
Mhm. All right. So we need to get going. This has been an incredible conversation, and I feel like we have so much more to talk about that I'm definitely
Totally.
having you back. But I would love to have you answer the final question. Looking back, what advice would you give yourself on day one of starting your business?
It's a numbers game. What I mean by that is the amount of sales that you bring in is the amount of effort you put out. We call it a cookbook, Kim and I, but basically it's if you want this end result, a, let's say a loaf of bread, then you need to know what goes into making that. So what I would tell myself is keep going. It's a numbers game.
And it's just a matter of time. If you're putting in the effort, if you're working all of the angles, that it's going to happen. And it just takes time.
I mean, I hope so. Otherwise, I mean, realistically, then you have to look at sales, your own sales process, your own services, your own fulfillment. I mean, it's not a surprise that people want to stay with you if they're enjoying the experience, right? I mean, that's the part that they're actually paying for is the service and the experience with you.
Yeah. Joy, talk for just a minute about your networking group that is international. So for all of you out there in, I don't know, all over the world, you can be a part of this. Could you tell us a little bit about Inner Circle?
Yeah, I mean, the Inner Circle is an international networking community that my sister Kim and I started 6 years ago. She's a business coach, and I'm a HR advisor, and together we really wanted to take business goals around leadership, development, marketing, and kind of tie that into um, you know different areas of networking, if you will. So, for instance, with leadership, it's CEO retreats and speaking opportunities and team development. If it's business development, it's brand awareness and referral business and building your pipeline and your email list and your power partners, which are referral partners. For marketing, it's, events that we have that people are sponsoring and showing up with. And it's really about, contact growth. We do direct connections at pretty much every event that we have. I'd say 95% of our events are virtual. And then we have three major events in the Chicagoland area each year, which are a leadership summit. They are a golf event, and you don't have to be an awesome golfer to come. It's fun. And it's also a CEO retreat. So really it's about power partner matching and sharing leadership subject matter expertise and really helping other business owners not feel so alone in their day-to-day of what they do, and letting them know, like, we've got your back, we've got resources, we're here to help you grow this business, and we also want to, celebrate those wins with you.
Awesome. And how do people find out more about Inner Circle, and then how do they reach you at STR?
So for Inner Circle, we have a website. It's www.inner. So it's inner between two circles. And then for Strategic Talent Resources, it's Joy Poli at Strategic Talent Resources.
Perfect. I'm going to put all of that in the show notes. So if you want to reach out to Joy, which you should, to help you with your HR, with recruiting, give Joy a call. You will not regret it. And I also welcome you to check out the Inner Circle Network. I'm also a member of Inner Circle, and it's a fantastic professional networking community of people who actually really care about each other. So yeah, I guess that's my favorite way to explain it. But it's so much more than that. But yeah, give it a try. Check us out if you have a minute. And Joy, thank you so much for being here and being my guest. Are there any final words you'd like to share with our audience?
No, I would just say you have to definitely get to know Julie on a deeper level too. I'm going to plug you since you don't plug yourself. Julie is amazing at what she does. And she's someone I truly adore as a friend, but also I do a lot of business with Julie on a regular basis, and she is a rock star. So you should definitely contact Julie if you need help with anything around marketing.
Ah, Joy, you're my favorite. Check's in the mail. Okay. Wink. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us today on She Built That with Julie Nichols. I'm Julie Nichols, owner of Julie Nichols Marketing. If you have any small business marketing needs, please reach out to me. It's julienichols.marketing.com. That's Nichols marketing.com, not like Nichols the money. And thank you so much for being with us, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks. Bye.